Of the Westchester Regional Office, Gary Brown.
Hi, everybody. Thanks a lot for listening to the Attorney General's report today. We're going to switch topics for a moment and get back to Ermin Nimitz and just a few about some of the holiday shopping tips, because we now have joining us on the phone line from Albany the Attorney General's Chief Information Officer, Mark Fleeman. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Gary. How are you today?
I'm really good, thanks. Mark, when I saw the email you distributed to staff last week about holiday phishing and online cyber scams, I thought this is something that the listeners of WVOX ought to hear, so I appreciate your calling in. What's the gist of what it is that you're warning about?
Well, the general gist of it is trying to let people know about the threats of identity theft. I saw some recent statistics that showed in 2010 that over 8 million people in the United States have been victims of identity theft. And while there's no firm estimates, they estimate over $30 to $40 billion in losses.
Wow.
And so generally, because of my position here, I do see these alerts come from Department of Homeland Security and so forth and so on. And so when I see one that I think is topical, I try to forward it on to the staff.
Well, I really appreciated that. So you talk, for example, about phony profiles on social networking sites. Could you describe that for us?
Well, I think there's a couple of things to think about. Is that with the explosion of social networking sites, it's a wonderful tool, but people do have a tendency to provide a little bit too much information. And one of the issues that I think we run into is that, thieves look for any avenue whatsoever to be able to, pull the wool over people's eyes.
Mm-hmm.
And so social networking sites is just another tool that they have in their toolkit to be able to entice people to what appears to be a legitimate site when in actuality it's not.
And what happens if you click on the link on a social networking page and it's one of those phony profiles?
Well, I think one of the things that might be helpful to some of your listeners is to explain some of it, the different mechanisms of which they use.
Mm-hmm.
The first one that is not individually, but it's something that definitely affects people, is data breaches in general. So again, looking at some statistics in 2010, there's been over 400 incidents in the United States, and these are companies that have been hit, and over 26 million records have been exposed, varying
Wow.
levels of information. So it is a major issue. And the piece that we're speaking about today is really kind of social engineering, which basically means it's a way of manipulating people into performing some type of action or divulging confidential information.
I see.
And in this particular case, when we talked about what we started with was spam, in general, spam is, by definition, is unsolicited email. So one of the issues that you run into with that is the potential of malware, which is, by definition, is malicious software. And, of course, what could be included in malware, viruses, worms, trojans, spywares, all that type of thing. To give you an idea, at the Attorney General's office, we, with 1,700 employees statewide, our email system handles about 2 to 3 million emails a week.
Wow.
And of that, 85% of that is spam.
Wow.
All right, and that is the statistic that's almost worldwide. So there's almost literally 10% of all incoming email is actually valid. And some of the spam that comes into looks very legitimate. Some of it looks like electronic greeting cards or screensavers or credit card applications. But specifically, the email that I sent on talked about phishing. And phishing is basically similar to what social engineering is all about, is try to entice you to perform an action. So a phisher will send an email that appears to come from a legitimate business, a bank or credit card company and so forth. But one of the hallmarks of phishing is they often request some type of information from you. And in fact, some of those will go so far as to warn you of some dire circumstance if you actually don't continue.
If you don't click.
Right. So some of the examples that I'd run into with phishing examples are certainly holiday, which is what we're talking about today. So whenever a holiday occurs, you'll see a great surge in spam email and phishing email that sounds legitimate, but it's actually coming from bogus retailers. And one of the hallmarks of that sometimes is they have the hot gift that you seem to find anyplace else. That's a way of getting you in there. Or another one, certainly timely, is bogus shippers. They'll say there's a package waiting for you, but then you have to fill out this information to get it. Along the lines also is hotels, messages from hotels claiming that there's been some type of wrong transaction posted to you, and if you act now, you can get that refunded to you. Unfortunately, also, some of the timely information is tragedy related. So as an example, when the Japanese tsunami occurred and most recently the flooding in New England, almost instantly the increase in spam and phishing occurs to try to entice you to actually go to a particular site and divulge personal information. And then, as you pointed out, the phony social networking sites and so forth. And I think some people have also seen when they go to a site, all of a sudden this fake antivirus warning comes up, right? And that's something that you need to get around.
Mark, I know that we're running up against the clock. I know there's a lot more information about this on the Attorney General's website, www.ag.ny.gov. So I'm going to have to direct the listeners there right now, and hopefully we can have you back on a future show and go over some of this in more detail.
That'd be great.
Thanks so much, Mark Fleeman, the Attorney General's Chief Information Officer. Be careful online out there, folks. There are folks out there who are using phishing and other cyber scams as techniques to rip off identities, and holiday season is the time of year when that stuff really picks up. So we appreciate Mark Fleeman calling in and warning us about that. And if you want more information, go to www.ag.ny.gov, which is the Attorney General's website. There's a lot more good and useful information there. You're listening to the Attorney General's Report on AM 1460 WVOX. My name is Gary Brown. I'm the Assistant Attorney General who runs the Westchester Regional Office for Attorney General Eric Schneiderman. And joining me here in the studio today is Irma Nimitz, who's an Assistant AG who just started with us recently. And Irma, before Mark Fleeman joined us on the line, we were talking about some of the Consumer Product Safety Commission warnings about holiday safety. We were talking about how dangerous balloons are for small children and how discarded balloons should be discarded at once. Small balls and other toys with small parts are similarly dangerous.
Yes, Gary, of